We all have a story to share, don't we? You have a story inside of you. We just want to relate to other people and understand where they're coming from and things from their past. My next author, well, his name is Norman Ross, and the book is called The Life of an Ordinary Man, but he's really anything but ordinary. Norman, welcome. I'm glad you're here today.
I'm so pleased to be with you. Thanks, Suzanne.
Norman, let's talk about your book. What's the overall message of it?
Well, it's the reason I wrote it was to have something that my children could read to remind them of, or tell them about my youth and what I've done in my life. And yeah, it's just a whole bunch of stories describing me and describing what I did.
So I know a lot of this has to do with your wife. And before we jump into this, you shared a story with me we've got to talk about, and that is your out-of-body experience. Would you share? This is just one of the many stories in your book.
Well, I was I was out with friends on in the middle of winter. This is way back in 1977, I think it took place. And he had there was a hill, and at the bottom of the hill, outside his cabin, there was a pond. And one day I said to my children, let's go and visit Bill, and you can skate on his pond. So we did. And I borrowed Bill's skates. I never could skate, but I borrowed Bill's skates that day, put them on, and set off down the hill to where the pond was. And of course, I lost my footing. I flew through the air. My daughter saw me flying through the air, and I landed on the side of my head. The next minute, very next minute, and I was knocked out, unconscious, totally unconscious. Next minute, I was up in the air, looking down on my body on the ground. I could see my body. I could see my children running up the hill to see what had happened to Dad. And then I heard voices. They were close by. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but for some reason I knew that they were angels. And they were angels, I thought, probably to decide whether or not it was time for them to take me away. And that went on for a little while. And then the voices disappeared, and I ended up waking up in my body with a sore head.
I'm sure you did. That was quite a conk you took. I mean, this is just one of the amazing stories that you're going to find in this book. Can we just start also with the fact that you got 9 children and 32 grandchildren? That's not ordinary, Norman.
Well, I didn't achieve much in my life.
Oh.
So maybe having 9 children, well, my wife had them, of course, and raising them was some sort of an achievement.
Norman, you're such a humble man. Does faith play into your life story at all?
Did what? Sorry?
Does religion or God play into your story?
If you read my book, as I hope people will, my faith is not explicitly expressed, but it comes through in what I write, because it's so important to me to believe in God, believe in the Son Jesus, and to know that I'm going to heaven. And that's very important in life.
Absolutely. Again, we are speaking to Norman Ross, and his book is called The Life of an Ordinary Man. Norman, what is it that you're trying to convey in this book? What do you want people to feel or think when they're done reading your book?
Well, maybe they'll think, well, I hope they like it. I hope people like the stories. I express myself fairly humorously sometimes. It's certainly not an academic type of book. It's just a story about life, and maybe they can relate to some of the same things that happen in their life, and maybe that will lead them to write down the stories for their offspring and progeny later on in life. That's what I wanted to do. That was the reason for writing my book.
Pass these stories down so they don't get lost when we leave, right?
That's right. Yeah, I used to listen to Michael Halliday in the golden age of pop music in the 50s. And he sang a song, "Someday I'm going to write a story of my life." And that's exactly what I decided to do about, I don't know, nearly 20 years ago. I first started writing down all the stories. And I've got more. I've got a second volume waiting to be published. A lot more stories.
You know what it feels like to me is, imagine that we're walking into a crowded cafeteria and there's nowhere to sit down except there's a chair right next to you.
Yes.
And I say, "Sir, do you mind if I take this chair?" And we engage in sincere, real, raw conversation. That is what your book feels like to me. Just hearing about your life, caring about the influences, what brought you to where you are today. We've all got stories.
That's absolutely amazing what you just said, because in my book, there's a poem that I wrote exactly what you've just said. It's about a man who came to sit down beside me, and then I told him the story.
Well, you did a good job writing it, because that's what it conveys to me. Just hearing the interview, just talking with you, you are like someone that I would pray that I would be able to get to sit next to and just keep my mouth shut and listen. I think there's so much wisdom.
I'd love to do that one day, Suzanne.
I would like that too. Let's talk about your wife.
Yeah.
She was such an important part of your life.
Yes. Can I show the picture of her?
Please do.
I don't know if there's our
yes.
wedding picture.
Yes.
Oh, and there she is on the bottom. And one of my favorite pictures is this one here on the right.
Beautiful. Yeah. Share with me briefly about her. What was her spirit like? What was her soul? How did it speak to people?
Well, she was very gentle. Her family was everything. She had friends, but she preferred looking after her family, looking after me, looking after all the children. That was her life. That's her life's work, to bring up children, to love the Lord, and to be good citizens, and to to help one another, and to help all the others that may have come across their path. That was what my wife was wanting to do, and I think she achieved it.
How many years were you married?
Well, we were married at the time she died. We were 51 and a bit years. So I knew her for 53 years of my life, including the courting, which I write about in my book. I write about how we met, how I fell in love. It's all amazing. And she was the only woman I ever knew. And I write about that fact as well. And when I say knew, I mean in the biblical sense of that word, knew.
Sure. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I wish we had so much more time to talk. But you've certainly given us a little tease to have to buy the book now, find out more about you. It's just a very, very sweet, precious read is the way that I would describe it. Norman Ross, The Life of an Ordinary Man. Thank you for joining us today. Bless you, my friend.
Thank you.